All right, everybody. Hope you all have had a great weekend. I want to jump in here. Going to try and keep this more into like a focused watch list instead of a mass overview of everything. Try and keep it a little bit more focused and keep it on things that will actually be on the possible trade list this week. So we'll kind of run this and then see if that's any easier to follow into this week. So to start off with, we have Apple. I've touched on this a little bit in the journal room this week, but we have two inside bar compressions from the earnings reaction. So this was a big 3 outside bar. We now have a 1, and well, this is a 1 to that, but a little bit out of that range, right? We took that low by about $1 and brought it back in. So personally, for me, try not to like get married to biases or anything, but just like thinking out loud. They have their event the first week of September. We're at the weekly 21 EMA moving average, which is what trend support was during June. So would imagine this is probably going to be trend support again. I think the most powerful entry here would be a slight undercut of this 300 area and touch this 298 half area where the moving average is or something like that, and then see it reclaimed. And I think that would be a good chance for like a slingshot back to the upside. But either way, very, very simple. Looking for a break of 300 and hold for lower, or, undercut rally scenario also to get long. Like if you trend is your friend, if you're long bias here, you get a long off this 298, 300 area, or you wait for the compression break back over this 310 area, right where that weekly 8 EMA is. This is, kind of an inverse value gap here from the sell-off and a fair value gap from this move up here. So Apple is definitely on the focus list here. And then if you bring it down to a daily, you can kind of see it's starting to build out this range. This declining 8 EMA has been trend resistance. And I don't even know if you draw a downtrend like that, but the 50-day is right up here in that 309, 310 area. You can see that was supportive back through here as well. So really need to see a break and reclaim of 310 to confirm the upside attempt, or again, if you want to, pick it up off support off the bottom here, this 298, 300 area. So we'll be watching Apple this week. XAR touched on this last weekend about the aerospace and defense theme. We got the clean move to all-time highs this week, and that still leaves me at watching Boeing right at this weekly downtrend compression. And we talked about the big high time frame on this already last week, so I'll spare you that. But Boeing is constructively setting up here against this gap down. Like this is the gap down area I've referenced. If you watch this as support now, I think that would be a big change in character for Boeing, because you've seen these prior attempts up through this area and they immediately sold off. So the fact that this is starting to flag out versus just drop back to the bottom of the range shows a bit of a change in character, in my opinion. You've got this 8-day right here that is acting supportive, and Friday gave us a little bit of an inside bar there. So this looks set up into this week. If you look at a weekly, again, it could take a little bit of time. It could take another inside week here. It wouldn't surprise me. But with how compressed these weekly moving averages are, it's totally possible this catches some momentum here, trying to come out of this like squeeze. So Boeing is still a high watch as far as contracts. I think September, you can pick how aggressive you want to be. I think 250s could work, because I think if this gets a breakout, it's going to have some momentum behind it. I think 240 to 245 comes quickly, but you can choose any strike from 240 to 250, I think. But the 250s, you'll need a quicker move sooner than later, about 20 points out of the money. And we are coming into August OPEX this week, so we'll start to need a little bit of a quicker move there. The further out of the money you go, October honestly wouldn't be bad either. If you want to pay up for the premium, I think this has potential for a multi-week move anyway, so might not be bad to go out a little bit further in time. Going into the AI infra trade. I've been kind of writing these names off, but just looking through weekly charts this weekend, I think this is at an interesting spot. We've had the weekly 50 EMA defended here 4 times now since July. So this is becoming a nice little base. It's building out. Pretty big wick here that last week of July, and then a bit of a failed 2 here, closing green. This week, a doji candle here at the weekly 50 EMA. This was supportive back in March after the sell-off, and the don't have the confluence of this anchored VWAP being up here yet, but still not a bad area in my opinion. And let me actually, yeah, there you go. So your first handoff anchored VWAP would be through here if you want that confluence. So to me, this ETF and basket of stocks is worth putting back on radar. Irene has had a very large uptick in dark pool this week. Some record size prints have been coming. Oh, and they report end of August. I didn't see that. So that it is potential for earnings run up on this name. I think you've got the curl back up. I see a clear broadening formation here, but this was the first real week like push attempt back up. I think any dip into this low 40 area, like any dip through here, essentially is like worth a shot. This was the first week break back up. You may get a little back and fill through here, put in a higher low in this low 40 area and try to move back up. So I think Irene is worth watching, and then just going to a daily, you can kind of see that 200 day up there, putting the stuff on things. I don't know if anybody caught the conversation, but just talking about 200 SMAs recently this week and how the first test usually gets rejected. So see if this can build the energy back up here to making another attempt. We do have a little bit of a breakaway gap, and the 8 and 21 day starting to cross back up here. So again, any dips through this area-ish could be worth a shot on a higher low attempt. Cypher had a big move on Friday. I think they had a headline about being some state or something accepting their standards. But again, doji like failed to candle here. We broke the last week's low. Buyers actually closed it higher. And we are at that rising 50 EMA on the weekly. And again, you have a little bit of a confluence of that VWAP spot running through here for Cypher. So I do believe these are at decent areas. You have the retracement zone, and you have confluence of moving averages and VWAP there. So if the AI infra trade is not done, I do believe that these are some pretty attractive areas to kind of keep an eye on things here. And you've got like that rising uptrend there. So again, the way I have this, I have alerts set on prior weekly highs, but I will set some alerts kind of back in the middle of this range, like back under this weekly candle low right here. Would it be bad? You could easily see price pierce that, try and push back up. So we'll set an alert on that as well, and try and catch some dip buys back into that like 17 area if we see any kind of weakness in these names. But you can pick out of the basket of them. I listed the top holdings. This is definitely one of the more speculative ones, this KEEL, but it did have a CEO insider buy, so not a bad spot. Rising weekly 50 EMA, 618 retrace, and a prior high breakout retest spot. So some decent areas of interest for these names, and I think you can make a case for these getting a little bit of love here. The market's been so hit or miss with what is working and what is not. We'll just kind of see how that plays out. Energy. I'll very briefly talk about energy, XLE breaking out here in a big way this week. Mentioned coming into August that energy and oil names, had some of the best looking monthly charts, and we are seeing some of that come to fruition here on these, prior monthly high takes. So XLE, as I talked about, coming into August, we had a huge base breakout, a consolidative wave, and we are getting that leg higher. So energy looks very, very good here. That leads me to talk about fertilizers. These typically run with energy names, and very kind of similar pattern here. A lot of these names are breaking out of bases. XLE broke out of a base. This NTR, just for example, inverse head and shoulders, stage 1 base breakout, and now we kind of have that corrective wave to recheck it. Potentially the higher low has now been put in here in the last 2 weeks, and you have an inside bar candle to kind of play off of. 70, this VWAP from all-time high 70.90 will be a big line, but these look like corrective waves have been completed and potentially could start to want to move higher here, back over this 200-day. And then if you know, it has some room back up here, but I'm starting to really like this base building out and how these are shaping up. CF is another one. And Grime touched on this, but again, flagging right here into the moving averages. You've got, a 5 bar and pretty big compression here on this. Again, this one's a little bit stronger because it's not too far from all-time highs. And the correction was a bit more constructive in the way that it behaved. So kind of have an inverse head and shoulders look building out of this base as well. Still some room for this to build out, but I think these are worth putting on radar if we continue to see oil and energy act the way they are. And with the chem names, the fertilizer names comes the chemical names that have also been running with this sector. DD, DuPont, they just recently did a reverse split. So kind of interesting for them to do that. But prior all-time high breakout from 2018, and we are, flagging and basing kind of like the XLE did. So looking at this weekly structure, you have a big outside bar from earnings, and then we have a 1 inside bar this week. So we have a 3-1 setup into the week. This looks explosive, pennant compression here since the beginning of the year. Looks really, really set up here for more upside, in my opinion. And you've got what an earnings reaction here. Huge bar. As long as it can defend that high, it's just curling back up off this 8-day, retested the 21-day, and is now flagging here within this bigger consolidation. But DD looks extremely set up here. Options chain is a little thin, but at least it'll kind of point you in the direction of what to be looking at here. LYB just not nearly as a constructive setup, in my opinion. And then I haven't even looked at some of these. Not all of them are looking as good. DD is definitely one of the strongest ones there. And then the Dow, again, not as strong as DD. That would be kind of my focus name for those. So moving on from energy, wanted to talk about robotics. We are still positioned in this INDI. INDI Semiconductor, they are one of the suppliers for this Unitree IPO this week for China, and are seeing a run up into it. So I personally would like to be out of most of this into the IPO. I think, there's a lot of potential here, but if we just see a push into this 550, 580, $6 area as targets, I would be plenty happy with that. That would be like 50% on commons up into that $6 area. So this has a lot of potential, but typically can kind of see hype fade off just depending on how the IPO does, but we will see. A lot of these other robotics names are set up. VPG, I took a little starter in shares. I didn't alert Friday because I did it right before the close. But I think this is an attractive area for this. They are another robotics play. Huge multi-year breakout from 2018, right? This was your first impulse leg higher. Ugly corrective wave straight down. So definitely has some work to repair itself, but definitely one of the robotics names to watch, in my opinion. And the daily 200 SMA is right in here as well. So kind of building out a base from this pretty poor earnings reaction here. So that one, moving on to some stronger looking names. This TEL, pretty attractive base built out here, and I'll just leave those on. But you can see this gap fill area here from that prior earnings. And this base is just being built out for over a year. Hasn't done anything except trade this 195 to 250 range. So a lot of energy being built out here. You've got a 200-day to get back over. So a little bit of a break, kind of check back while that 200 EMA works to curl back up. It could take a little bit of work here, but this has been consolidating for over a year. I think another attempt at a move is coming. And I will say that the fact that this low wick here took out lows and then immediately reversed leads me to think that another move is building for higher, just with the way they wiped that low and then immediately reversed it on everybody. OUST definitely talked about more than some of the other names I've mentioned, but trying to break out of this base. If you look at a weekly chart, we have a few stages to look at, right? Stage 1, stage 2, consolidation, stage 3. This was possibly like a wave 4 correction, and we are into wave 5 here on this pushback up. So OUST LiDAR is definitely part of the robotics theme, and this chart has a little bit more momentum than some of the other ones. AEVA, these kind of have been in tandem together. Big inside week from earnings. I'm sure volume's dropping up here, but this one hasn't gotten out of that, second base, right? We broke out here. We've been still consolidating within this range for over a year now. So AEVA has some potential, in my opinion, flagging back to the 8-day on Friday. This would be a good spot for them to come in immediately. If there's momentum, if there's hype into the robotics trade, I think this type, flag, quick consolidation to the 8-day. And then I also like this earnings gap being defended here. Broke below it and then immediately bought back up. So I think AEVA is actionable into this week back to like this 24.5, 25 area, possibly targeting back to these prior highs at a minimum. May take a little bit of time to flag up and get out of it if they're going to. So robotics theme here, we'll cover it with that. Some of the other names are in my room. The CGNX also has a pretty nice base being built out here, in my opinion. To wrap it up here, we will talk about semis. I may as well have a few of these names on watch. Inside bar on AMD. I think there was a rumored headline or something Friday that negatively affected AVGO, positively affected AMD. So keep that in mind going into this week if anything else is said about it. I don't have the specifics right in front of me. But AMD moving average is very, very tight here, back above this 50-day, and is firing over this downtrend and the all-time high VWAP at 509.74. So very strong close on AMD. Inside week setup. This, if semis have it in them, AMD has held very, very well. And, until proven otherwise, this has potential in my mind. ARM, another inside week setup. Getting tight here within a few important areas. You've got the 50-day right here. I've got a couple clusters of anchored VWAPs from these gap downs that never filled. So this last one, most recent one, is now supportive. So this bottom range in that mid 260 area, if you see that trade, as long as the market holds together, I think the 260 area is nice. But now we're starting to get a little bit more momentum, in my opinion. Big outside bar here, and then inside bar as we try to mount this 8 and 21 day, attempting to cross back up here. So I think this is tightening and going to attempt the move higher. 290 is that weekly high. 293-ish is that second VWAP. You can see that's exactly where we failed a week ago from that gap down range. But that really opens up it a little bit to like the 308, 315 range, in my opinion. Obviously 300 psych area, but ARM is getting very, very tight. Don't think it will last much longer. As long as market is willing, holds together. And then ALAB also getting extremely tight here. Another inside week candidate. Hammer off those weekly moving averages. and still is one of the stronger looking names. Definitely took a haircut with the AI trade here, but pretty tight flag. I'm not sold on this going back to all-time highs or anything, but I think this could offer a nice range trade back up to this 350 area and give a little bit of room, just depending on how the market does. If we see some actual momentum into the SMH or semis in general. So that should cover it here. Got it in 20 minutes. As always, if you'll have any questions about anything, want me to check anything else out, be happy to. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.